Alessandro found himself walking through the streets of Prague every morning, a city he had learned to love over time, despite always being shrouded in a sort of melancholy. The cobbled streets and the trams that glided through the narrow alleys seemed to tell ancient stories, but the frenzy of the present was unstoppable. Prague was a city where the past and the future collided. Gothic architecture mixed with new buildings of glass and steel, and just like the city, Alessandro's life was a mix of old habits and new challenges. If you love stories that explore the connection between the past and the present, subscribe to our channel and don't miss more reflections like this. In his office located in the heart of Malastrana, Alessandro watched the clock on the tower of the old town hall relentlessly mark the passage of time. Every second ticked away seemed like a reminder of his race against the day, of the work that was piling up, of the deadlines he could no longer afford to ignore. The pressure was constant and ever-present, but his mind, for the first time, was not completely crushed by it all. Thanks to Takashi, he had learned to find small islands of peace in the chaos. Do you also have techniques for finding calm in the chaos of everyday life? Share them with us in the comments. Whenever she felt tension growing, she closed her eyes and mentally returned to the Zen temple hidden in the alleys of Vinohrady, one of the lesser-known and quieter neighborhoods of Prague. It was there that she met Takashi and began to understand that the secret was not in running away from her life, but in facing it with a different awareness. Try dedicating a few minutes every day to a moment of meditation and observe how your perspective changes. The temple itself was like a hidden gem. Unlike the imposing buildings that characterized the city, this one was modest, almost invisible to those who didn't know where to look. A small Zen garden with stones arranged in a seemingly random way, but following a perfect order. A small pond with koi carp, whose slow movements were in stark contrast to the turmoil of the city. It was a place outside of time, yet completely inserted into the heart of modern life. Once, while meditating in the garden next to Takashi, Alessandro had asked a question that had been tormenting him for a long time. How can I find peace here when everything outside is so chaotic? Takashi, as usual, smiled with that serene look that Alessandro now recognized as true wisdom. Chaos is outside only if you let it in. The stones of this garden, the silence, are no different from the traffic and noise of the city. It all depends on how you choose to observe it. If you too are looking for inner peace, remember that the answer often lies in the way you choose to perceive the world around you. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on other valuable tips. Those words stuck with him, but Alessandro was still not entirely convinced. The real conflict occurred inside him every time he left the temple and returned to the real world. Every time he found himself in traffic or faced with an unsatisfied customer, he wondered if he was really managing to maintain the serenity he had learned to cultivate in the garden. His old habits kept resurfacing, and the frustration had not completely disappeared. One evening, after a long day, Alessandro stopped at a small cafe along the Vltava River. The cool wind caressed the water, and the lights of the city reflected on its surface like fallen stars. It was there that he met Klára, a woman sitting at the table next to him. She also seemed deep in thought, but with an air of worry that Alessandro recognized immediately. Their paths crossed almost by chance, when she accidentally spilled a cup of tea on the table. Alessandro helped her clean it up, and from that moment they started talking. Klára was a lawyer with a brilliant career and a personal life that was slowly falling apart due to stress. She was trapped in the same spiral that Alessandro knew well. Klára explained how her days had become an endless stream of meetings and emails, and how she felt like a machine that was producing results but never felt truly alive. Alessandro, for the first time, found himself on the other end of the conversation. He was no longer the one looking for answers, but was able to offer advice. He told her about Takashi, the temple, and what he had learned. Klára, as skeptical as he had been, listened attentively. but her expression revealed that she was not convinced. "How can a little silence change everything?" he asked. "Don't underestimate the power of calm and silence. Try to find a corner of peace in your day." Alessandro smiled, recognizing that question, because he had asked it at the beginning. It's not just silence, it's learning to observe, to let go. When you can do that, you understand that you don't have to control everything to feel good. In the days that followed, Alexander noticed that Klára was beginning to seek moments of respite. They often met at the cafe along the river, and he invited her to visit the temple with him. One day, finally, she accepted. When she met Takashi, she too was struck by his calmness. But her path to serenity would be different from Alexander's. Klára did not find it easy to accept the idea that she could not control everything. The conflict in her was evident, and unlike Alexander, she could not let go so easily. One day during a meditation, she suddenly stood up and said, "I can't do this. I can't stand still while the world collapses around me." Takashi didn't stop her, but simply said, "Your world will collapse too, whether you control it or not. True strength is not in preventing the fall, but in knowing how to stay standing afterward." The real lessons in life come when we learn to let go of control. If you agree, share your opinion with us in the comments. Takashi's words resonated strongly with Klára, who slowly began to understand that change would not come immediately, but only with time and practice. Alessandro, meanwhile, continued to find his balance, facing life's challenges with a new perspective. Work, family, relationships. Everything seemed to flow differently. Not because the difficulties had disappeared, but because he had learned to look at them with new eyes. Klára and Alessandro's story was intertwined with that of the city of Prague, a city that perfectly represented the dualism between chaos and serenity. The ancient streets, the modern buildings, the frenetic pace of the day, and the peace that fell at night all reflected the most important lesson they had learned. Life is never completely under our control, but we can choose how to live it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to continue your journey of awareness and discover more stories of personal growth. One day, as they were walking together across Charles Bridge, with tourists surrounding them and the noise of the city in the background, Klára said to Alessandro, "I haven't found the peace you've found yet, but I have learned one thing. It doesn't matter how long it takes me. It's the journey that counts, not the destination." Alessandro smiled, knowing that she too was beginning to understand the true meaning of Zen. Remember, the journey is the real learning. Keep walking and discover new perspectives,